Good afternoon. My name is Hailey Hardgrave, and I'm a third-year medical student at University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences in Little Rock, Arkansas. Today, I'm going to be speaking to you on my research that I performed in conjunction with the emergency department as well as our local EMS service on shocking asystole and out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, looking at mortality and cerebral performance. I have no financial disclosures. This research was performed as part of a large team effort with members of our emergency medicine faculty, representatives from the EMS service, as well as a few of my fellow medical students. To start with a little bit of background, we know that out-of-hospital cardiac arrest is an event with unfortunately poor overall survival and poor neurological outcome. Out-of-hospital cardiac arrest are typically managed per traditional ACLS protocol. This includes your shockable rhythms of VFib and VTAC, and your non-shockable rhythms of asystole and pulseless electrical activity. Here in Little Rock, we have one primary EMS provider. They have a service population of over 500,000, and they transport to multiple medical centers throughout Little Rock, as well as North Little Rock and a few surrounding counties. For out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, they send in an advanced life support team. This consists of at least one paramedic plus one EMT and sometimes an additional paramedic. In 2017, this EMS service implemented a protocol change where they began shocking asystole. This change was to provide a theoretic safeguard for misinterpretation of ECG rhythms by EMS providers. Some commonly misinterpreted rhythms include asystole lookalikes, such as a very fine VFib rhythm, which actually does need to be shocked for ALS. So before this protocol change, they were only shocking VFib and VTAC. After the protocol change, they also began shocking all rhythms interpreted as asystole. For the study, we performed a retrospective chart review before and after this protocol change. We included all out-of-hospital cardiac arrests treated by this EMS provider from August of 2016 to March of 2017. We excluded patients whose arrest was related to a traumatic etiology, as well as patients less than 18 years of age. At this time point of the study, we included patients transported to 2 medical centers, as well as patients not transported to the hospital due to termination of resuscitation on scene. We obtained our data both from EMS service records and records from the destination hospitals. Upon IRB review, this study was considered to be exempt, and each of these patient charts were individually reviewed by trained research team members, and our abstractors were blinded to the date of the protocol change to prevent bias. We looked at a primary outcome in mortality and a secondary outcome of a favorable cerebral performance score at time of hospital discharge. We considered a favorable CPC to be a score of 1 or 2. If you take a look at this chart, a CPC of 1, the patient has good cerebral performance, they're conscious and able to work. CPC of 2, moderate cerebral disability, but still able to function independently, ranging all the way down to a CPC of 5, which is brain death. So for patients where resuscitation was terminated on scene or the patient expired at some point during the hospital course, a CPC of 5 was automatically assigned. For the other patients, our research assistants did assign a CPC score based off of information obtained in the patient record, and the CPC score was later checked by an attending physician for accuracy. Looking at our initial results, we had 438 eligible patients after our exclusions. This included 186 patients before and 282 patients afterwards. Our median age was 65 in before group and 64 in our after group, and those were statistically similar ages. We had a male sex of about 50% in both groups, again, statistically similar between groups. In our before group, about 10% of patients had an initial cardiac rhythm of asystole, and in our after group, about 5% of patients had that initial rhythm of asystole. But again, this was statistically similar between the groups. Looking at survival and favorable CPC outcomes for these eligible patients, we had 9 survivors before and 16 survivors after the protocol change. 4 patients had a CPC of 1 or 2 before the change and 8 patients after. And in both groups, we had a median CPC score of 5. Looking at our primary outcome of mortality, mortality had a relative risk of 0.98 with our confidence interval crossing 1, so showing no statistical significance. Looking at our secondary outcome of favorable CPC, we had a relative risk of 1.48, again, our confidence interval crossing 1 and showing no significance. So in conclusion, we had no significant change in either mortality or in our favorable CPC scores. This is also in part likely due to our analysis being largely underpowered. Because survival and favorable CPC scores were such rare outcomes, this created an underpowered analysis. We only had 25 total survivors and 12 patients with favorable CPC between the two groups. So moving forward with this, we do hope to add more patients transported to other medical centers to add some power to the study. We currently have plans to add about 500 more patients from another major medical center. We also hope to evaluate the impact of other variables on survival of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. These include variables such as comorbidities, medications the patient was taking, bystander CPR, etc. And we also plan to perform a regression analysis to control for these outside variables. Here are my citations for my information, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to do this virtual presentation, and I hope to see you all in person at the conference next year.